we're going to go to our next guest who I know there's many, many fans out there, which is the great Larry Ferlazzo. And for me, this is such a treat because I have been trying for the last 4.5 years to get Larry to do something because he's the most busiest man in the world. Larry, you do so much. I just find it astounding that you share so much. And actually, I have to thank you because you are one of the first reasons why I started Twitter, and you're also a reason why I stayed and started sharing and got excited because even though you do so much, you're one of the kindest people out there, and you are constantly very supportive. So I really have to thank you for that. Thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Shelley. Though it's sort of funny to hear you call me a really busy person. Since I think that's the definite, that would be the definition of you in a dictionary.
And now you have quite a few books, and your books, I often quote your books on parent engagement because you say so many profound things about that. And then you also have another book about actually going to houses and with language learners and really talking to the parents too. Do you want to tell us a little about your different books and the key points that you want readers to get from it?
Well, I've written several books. 2 books on student motivation and helping students to develop intrinsic motivation, and I have a third one coming out. And then 2 books on teaching English language learners, and another one on building parent engagement, and then one on sort of classroom management and student motivation, which is a collection of my EdWeek columns. And I think the overriding perspective of all of them is, it comes from my experience prior to becoming a teacher 11 years ago. I was a community organizer for 19 years. And out of that, I learned that you really can't motivate anybody to do something, but you can create the conditions in which they can motivate themselves. And I think that is the underlying message in the way I teach. At least I try to make it the underlying message to what I teach and in the books. But that's sort of a quick summary. And then what I'm doing this summer is working on the 3rd volume on helping students develop intrinsic motivation. And then after that, a colleague and I are writing a follow-up to our book on the ESL, ELL Teacher's Survival Guide.
Wow, you are so busy, and in between, I know you do manage to find time to play basketball every once in a while.
Yep, several nights a week. So that's what I playing basketball, however mediocre I might be, having a great family, and teaching at a great school, all combined to give me a lot of positive energy.
Oh, that's great. Now, I do want to ask you some. Now, you're writing a series this time, and that's not, and that's not usually the usual that there is a series. So, why have this series, and why do the books sort of build off of each other, or how do they kind of all relate to each other?
Well, clearly, the theme for all 3 is on helping students develop intrinsic motivation, and it didn't start out as a series, but there's always plenty of new research, and based on my own experience and the experience of my colleagues in the classroom. As you know, a teacher can never have too many tools in their toolbox when it relates to student motivation and positive classroom management. And I think one of the ways I look at it is there's this perspective of looking at things either as a puzzle or as a mystery. And people have used that to analyze American foreign policy, actually. Whereas a puzzle is, it's very straightforward. You just got to put the pieces together. It's sort of almost like a flow chart. Whereas a mystery is, there are lots of moving parts. You're dealing with lots of changing self-interests. And when it comes time to student motivation and also classroom management, if you look at it as a puzzle, it's not going to work very effectively. But if you look at it as a mystery with constantly moving parts, we have scores of different students, changing public situations, that there are always going to be new ways and new ideas. There's not one strategy that's going to work for every student.
And I think that it's great that you say that, because so many times, and I think that's because you're still a teacher, and that really blows my mind, because I know there's a lot of people who write and in education, and including me, and I do teach, but teachers these days, and but you're still in the classroom, and that just really blows my mind. But that you keep that element of that, you realize that each teacher that's reading it's different for them, the experience they're going to have with your books and what you recommend. So I think that's really great that you do that, because sometimes you read these books and it seems like they're saying this is the only way you can do it, and if it doesn't work out, then the teacher starts feeling like they're just not that great, or that they're doing something really wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I've certainly, I've learned through trial and error, and some of the things that I do one year don't work as well the following year with a different batch of students. And I teach at Sacramento's largest inner city high school, and certainly outside environments, around, for example, the recession and lots of other challenges that families affect, it also affects students and creates different stresses and pressures. So we all live in a changing world. We've got to adapt.
Yeah, I think that's great, and also I like that and I think that's a big part of student motivation too, is that you include parents in that equation. And I know for a lot of teachers that can be pretty scary as well. To have parents really have a say, and I bring back your book because it had such a profound effect on the way that I looked at engaging parents, because you said that there was a difference between involvement and engagement, and often we're okay and very happy with parents, for example, baking or being chaperones, but that we need to give them much more say. And I just thought that was really profound when I read that from you. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I think I view parent involvement as more as doing to, whereas parent engagement is doing with. And where parent involvement, we sort of look at parents from the eyes of a social worker, or viewing them as sort of clients, and through parent engagement, we look at them as partners and allies. In terms of students, they have far more experience with their child than we are ever going to have, and they're sources of advice and help. The vast majority of time. We teachers need all the help we can get.
Yeah, we definitely do. And I'd like to ask you, what was your turning point? You talk about student motivation. It seems like you feel very comfortable with your students, and even now you speak very comfortably about classroom management and motivating your students. I've seen some of your projects, and I think they're awesome. I think you recently posted, well, a couple of months ago, book trailers for, and it was either with Vine or Instagram, and I thought those were just very creative. But what was your kind of key moment, or maybe a talk or something that you experienced that got you to look at it in this way?
Well, I think, I think as I mentioned earlier, coming from 19 years as a community organizer and realizing that, pushing a rope doesn't work, help people move in the direction that you'd like them to move. That really what will do that is developing relationships, and then helping people, figure out a way to connect those relationships, and what you've learned out of those relationships about people's hopes and dreams and interests, and to connect those hopes, dreams, and interests to what's happening in the classroom, what's happening in what's happening in the community. That is the best way to move people in a positive direction, and to help people want to move in a positive direction. I think it makes me feel better about my teaching. I think it's less stressful for me, and I think it's ultimately a much better situation for students or for parents, for all of us, right? I mean, nobody wants to be viewed as a rat in a maze. People want to feel like they have, control over their lives, and that they are the engine that moves it across, moves it forward around their dreams. Does this always work? No, right? I mean, have I used bribes or threats to move things forward, because of an immediate situation that needed to get done? Of course I have, right? But the question is, do you have an exit strategy? Do you have a plan on how to move that to a different way? I mean, it's a question, do you tend more towards intrinsic motivation or extrinsic?
And I think that's a really good point. I remember when I was doing my master's for ESL, that was the first time I'd ever read Alfie Kohn, who talks about that, and I remember getting very angry at the beginning, or very defensive, and thinking, why can't I use stickers? But after a few, for I think teachers often, we have to be open to learning, and that it's not necessarily that. And that's what learning is about, to reflect on, ways that you might have done things that maybe, weren't the best, but you grow from it, and you learn. So I think that's really wonderful that you write about this, and I can definitely say that they should check out all your books, because there have been so many times in reading your articles and everything like that I've just had aha moments with your writing. So I really do. I know that a lot of people know you for being the world's most incredible resource sharer, but you also but in your writing, it's different. You're very thoughtful, you're very caring, and you do say a lot of things, at least for me, open my eyes, and we're like, wow, that's a great way of looking at it. We didn't have any questions except for kind of one. Craig Yen, who's also in the Sacramento area, would like to play some basketball with you sometime. So I think there's a little basketball challenge there.
Okay, it sounds good. Anytime, any place, Craig.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was such an honor to be able to hang out with you today. And you can always find, if you don't follow Larry Ferlazzo already, they can do a search for you. Also, you're an author on Amazon, and that's probably the best way to find all of your books.
Yeah, Josie Bass and Rutledge and Linworth have been the three publishers of the book. So I think Amazon has them all. So.
Yeah, Routledge has been so great about that. They make it immediately
Oh
available
yeah.
on, yeah, Kindle and everywhere. So,
Yeah.
and we'll be putting that link up as well on the Ning as well, and sharing the future of education. So, thank you so much for joining us, Larry.
Well, great. Well, thanks for the invitation. And I don't know how you're maintaining your energy today with all these interviews you're doing, but more power to you.
Yeah, that just means I probably won't wake up tomorrow for the real conference, but that's okay.
Elizabeth, do you want to talk about your book? What kind of book is this?
Okay. My book is called The Magic Roots. It's sort of like a fairy tale, but with more adventure in it. It all starts with a big forest full of large trees, and each of them, in their widest route, have carved a story, carved in gold. And the only living beings who knew about it were the animals. And one day, one of those animals, a rat, told that secret to humans. And they gathered up and started chopping down the trees and collecting all the roots. The homeless animals went to the wise owl of that forest, and she decided that they should make some of the other humans that wanted the forest to live, make them plant other trees. So a hedgehog went there to a school and started shouting to the humans to plant trees. So they did it. And after lots of years, the forest grew and everything was back to normal.
Well, that's
But
incredible. Oh, sorry. Continue.
But after the humans got the magic roots, they lost completely their power. They weren't magic anymore. So when they went to sell them, all the other people realized what they have done, and they all went to prison.
Okay,
Will
I answer this?
Okay.
Okay, so that's kind of the lead into the story. And then after that, a musician visits the forest 100 years later and meets the spirit of the forest. And they go on wild adventures together, trying to find out the secrets of the magic roots.
Now, so it's 2 years later, what has resulted from you writing and publishing a book? I mean, that's amazing, but what kind of things have you seen as a result of this?
After I wrote that book in Greek, we translated it in English, and now it's on Amazon.
School exhibition.
And first people to know about that book was, of course, my family, and after that, my class and my teacher. So she organized a small book exhibition for me, and I presented it to my class and their parents. After that, this year, the whole school organized a huge book exhibition with other books from other writers, and I could sell my book there. So that was one step further.
Okay, and you did your book exhibition for the with lots of other
and
authors.
Also, last year in village here, there was an even bigger book exhibition with all the writers from all over Greece, and they presented it there. That was the biggest thing that happened with my book, because they wrote about it in newspapers, and lots of other writers saw it and said that it was good.
Oh, that's amazing.
Also, I'll just add a few extra information. The other children in Elizabeth's class were very inspired, and so were the teachers and parents, because it hadn't really occurred to people that a young child would actually sit down and write a whole book. And after that, we had some meetings with parents to discuss how we can encourage children to read more. And within those meetings, it came out that lots of children don't read much at home, or don't even have books, really. They don't really buy them. And we talked about how they can use comics if they don't like reading very long books. And their teacher was absolutely amazing. And it was her who really inspired the book in the first place, because she gave them a creative essay to write in school. And that day, Elizabeth came home and said she was really happy. And she said, I'm really excited because I wrote a story in school. And she showed me the story. And I said to her, I think that's just the first chapter. And she said to me, that's exactly what my teacher said. And she said, I have to go now. And she ran off to her room. And she stayed in the room for 2 hours. And she came out and she wouldn't tell us what she was doing. And then she had some secret meetings with her little brothers and sisters. And she told them that she's going to write a book, and that they were all going to write books together, and it's going to be a secret. So every day for 4 months, leading up to Christmas, the 4 children wrote for 2 hours every day in their rooms, and they wouldn't tell us what they were doing. It was a big mystery. And they showed us their books on Christmas Day. So that was our Christmas present. And then after that, we published them in hard copy in Greek, and after I translated them into English. We translated them together. But about the inspiration is that another boy in her class wrote a book after Elizabeth's book because he was inspired by her. So lots of children started thinking that they could do it, and it kind of awakened the imagination of the whole area. So that was really special.
Yes, that's just amazing, all the events that sparked from it. And that was actually what I was going to ask. I was going to say, how did your friends react to you writing a book? And I kind of felt at the beginning that they might not have supported her, but you can see how she inspired others, and that's just truly amazing. That's really incredible. Now, you wrote a book as well, right, Sylvia? You recently wrote a compilation with many different types of authors.
Yes, that's right. We had this club on Facebook. It's the Entrepreneur Club, where online teachers connect and inspire each other. And that was before I met you at the EduGoals. And so we were a tiny group. And one of the most important people for me in that group was Andre Klein from Learn Out Live. And he was one of the first online teachers who inspired me when I started. And he's also a writer, so he's one of the most important people who have inspired me in my teaching and in my writing. And he came up with the idea of writing a collaborative book. So it's called Learn Natural English Through Storytelling, Stories for Intermediate and Advanced Learners. And it's written by 8 teachers covering all continents of the world. So, we're from different parts. So everybody wrote any kind of story they wanted. My story is for advanced or proficiency level because it has very high level vocabulary and ideas. It's very imaginative and unusual, and it's some psychological insights, which is kind of predictable from me. Actually, what I did was I thought that from all the course books and anything we have about proficiency or advanced English, there is very little of the humanistic element or very little of social or emotional learning. And students try to communicate in English without feeling the soul of the language or owning the own language in their own way. So I thought the best way to own the foreign language is to be able to express your feelings, and I don't think we teach enough about expressing feelings. So I actually took a list of verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and descriptive feeling words from a word list in a book I have called Nonviolent Communication. And I said I'm going to create my story from that list. So it was a list of words expressing feelings that are far advanced or proficiency level. And then I just let my fingers do the typing, and the result was a surprise to myself as well as anybody else. So it's quite challenging, but it's an interesting story because it has very unusual characters. It's a kind of a triangle relationship between three people in a neighbourhood: a woman, her next door neighbour, and a teenager who lives across the road. And there are lots of mysteries and secrets going on, and you have to work out what's happening in the relationship. So yeah, it definitely keeps you interested until the end, because it just, different elements unfold and you don't know what will happen until the ending. After the story, all of us put exercises, vocabulary word lists, and lots of exercises for students to learn everything about vocabulary and meanings and that kind of stuff. The other stories are wonderful. Other teachers wrote for intermediate level or lower levels. Jason, Fluency MC, turned one of his raps into a poem and a story, very, very inspiring. Most of the stories are inspiring and have some lessons to learn in life, and I've written reviews about this as well on my blog, so maybe I can share the reviews later somewhere for people to find them.
Yeah, definitely. Put those in the chat box, the Google chat box next, and I'll go or just email them to me, and I'm gonna add all of this to the site afterwards, so that way they can go and they can find your books and they can download them and read them or get them on the Kindle as well. So thank you so much, Sylvia. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to see you at ArsCon. You are presenting, and what day are you presenting?
Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, Sunday evening. Okay, so I can't wait for that. I've got lots of ideas to share, and it's always a wonderful experience, and I'm so happy to be included and working with so many wonderful people.